just kind of recap a little bit, this morning we looked at this as well, and I just kind of briefly recap what we looked at this morning, especially for those that maybe weren't able to be here in the morning service, and maybe for those that did and want to see it again or whatever, but basically as it says here in Mark 16:15, and he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, and the opportunity that we have to be able to impact not just our own nation, but other nations as well. But while we're trying to reach the world for Christ, we have to remember that the world starts with the world around us. Our own Jerusalem, our Judea, our Samaria, the individuals around us that we run into on a day-by-day basis, the opportunity to be able to impact them with the gospel, to encourage them, and maybe say, well, I'm not that kind of a person, I just don't, I don't find it comfortable to talk to people or whatever, and I understand there's different people that have comfort levels on those things, and really the best thing to do is respond to the Lord's leading and maybe even ask Him, Lord, would you give me somebody to talk to? Will you give me something to say? And then just respond to when the Lord prompts your heart to say that thing or talk to that person. Just start there. It'll be surprising to you, I think, what the Lord will use you if you're a willing vessel. It says in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 9:37, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. And if you're just willing labor, God will make sure you get to the right place at the right time, talk to the right person, and will give you those words to say. You can trust Him to do that. But in any case, all that to say, we have a specific opportunity, and I showed the video here this morning. I'll just kind of show it a little bit here again briefly tonight. It's a challenge to all of us, and I gave the testimony this morning that this is what we're going to look at here. It's an opportunity to be able to impact the people around us. Sometimes, as I mentioned this morning, when we talk about preaching the gospel, doing other things like that, a lot of times people think of going door to door, and I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing to do if the Lord leads you to do that. That's not at all the point. The point very simply is this, is we can do these different things, but also we have opportunities throughout the year where people actually come to us. And I think one of these opportunities is coming up at the end of this month in Halloween, and so I'll let this video kind of explain that a little bit here this evening.
Halloween. It may be a lot of things you like or don't like, but it is the last American tradition where it's okay for complete strangers to come to your house. We pray about opportunities to love our neighbors. But are we missing one that's right under our noses? What if we, the church, saw the incredible potential in Halloween to build relationships with our neighborhoods? Let's think about it. We're spread out all over town. We interact with all sorts of people. And we can all do something simple this year to bring the love of Jesus to others. Let's do more than carve pumpkins. Let's join together as a church to intentionally use Halloween to reach our neighbors and love our community.
And just kind of remind people as well, it's funny because Katie and I, as I mentioned this morning, our kind of take, we've never really traditionally celebrated Halloween or anything, and that's not what I'm saying with this, but we have to understand that there's an opportunity where a bunch of individuals are coming around to our houses to be able to impact those individuals. It's a reverse evangelism opportunity. They're coming to us rather than us going to them, and so we can use those opportunities. And as I've said this morning, Katie and I usually in our neighborhood, we usually shut off the light, and basically that means that then the house is unapproached or whatever. Typically we either make a date of it or we'll do something like that or whatever. But it's an opportunity to be able to minister to neighbors, to family members, if there are those around as well, friends, whatever. And so, as I mentioned this morning, we have a couple ideas here to be able to intentionally use Halloween. And the thought would be, and I have these little handouts, okay, so you can actually take some of these with you. Look at this, some of the details are on here. It's the trunk or treat idea that we're going to look at here in a second. But being intentional as Christians to use Halloween to be able to, or the different workings of Halloween to be able to spread the gospel. Here's a couple thoughts here. Include kid-friendly tracts or church outreach cards with the candy that you give out. And again, the reminder would be not to be skimpy on the candy. That's not going to be a good testimony, and it's going to leave a bad taste, no pun intended. But set up portable bonfire in the driveway, maybe invite kids to roast hot dogs or s'mores. Give out apple cider, hot chocolate, or cookies. Invite other church people to join with you in your neighborhood outreach, perhaps those who do not live in areas that do trick-or-treating. Dress up maybe like a Bible character to promote conversation. You know, as people come around, you dress up like Moses and like, oh, who are you? You know, and you get an opportunity to be able to talk to them. If you would prefer not to be involved in trick-or-treating, maybe invite a family member, a neighboring family over for dinner instead. Maybe participate in a church trunk or treat outreach. And so what we're proposing is, and we have on the bulletin board, we have a sign up. We have a number of people already signed up. I think it's like 8 or 9 people signed up, maybe even 10. Some are helping, some not necessarily doing a trunk or treat. But opportunity there to, on Sunday, October 28th, and we're going to check into some more detail because this is what we're moving forward with. Sunday, October 28th, from 5 to 8, would be an opportunity here to be able to do a trunk or treat. And I'll show you in a second what that looks like. The opportunity there, or the thought is to wear a friendly costume. Please leave the scary ones at home. Park your vehicle in the parking lot here at church with the trunk facing out. Decorate your trunk with a biblical theme. Look online, or Katie has ideas. I have some more here. I'll give you in a second visual ideas. Please no ghosts, witches, goblins, zombies, or anything that's scary or Halloween themed, but there's plenty of things that you can do outside of that. Set up folding chairs next to your trunk, place your treats, candy, or small toys in your trunk and hand out to kids as they visit. Smile and engage visitors in friendly conversation. So it's just an opportunity to reach out. We already have the 8 to 10 families, but more can join with that as well to decorate their cars here at church. Volunteers to help with hot chocolate, hot dog stands, etc. Volunteers to assemble and pass out church information packets. So we're looking at that opportunity here, October 28th, so the end of this month, last Sunday night of the month. And here's some visual thoughts that I looked at. You know, we talked about a little bit this morning, but for those of you that maybe weren't here this morning, to be able to decorate maybe in these different themes. Daniel the Lion's Den is the one on the right, and you know, other things, creative ideas. This one says, taste and see that the Lord is good. I can't remember the psalm for that, but it's in the Psalms. I want to say Psalm 85, but taste and see that the Lord is good. And then, you know, obviously just having some different things to spread out for that. Here's, you know, store up your treasures in heaven. Also, Katie had mentioned, I mentioned this morning, that there are multiple things that we have, VBS things that can be used for some of this stuff to be able to decorate. So you can take advantage of some of those opportunities. We have a wonderful treasure chest already made, you know, it's really elaborate and all that kind of stuff, so that'd be great for this theme. Ezekiel's bones is another one. There's a manger scene on the back of the car. Some other ones here, just some different ideas, the feeding of the 5,000. Also, this is more of like a superhero themed. We have an Incredible God, so having the Incredibles, or a Superman theme where it says sin is our kryptonite. The power of Jesus can cleanse us from sin, and a verse that talks about that. So it's just, you know, different creative things, and some people are more creative than others, and some people need those ideas. Katie has tons of ideas, and she's going on this, so you can just tap her a little bit, and she'll give you all sorts of thoughts. She's not going to decorate your car for you, but she will give you a bunch of thoughts. So anyway, so there's all sorts of different things there, and there's a Noah's Ark, and a couple different scenes of Noah's Ark, heavenly fruit salad. So again, just all sorts of different ideas, thoughts. When we rely on God, having some frogs there. Jonah in the whale. That one's cute. I mean, all of them are, but there's this one, Jonah in the whale. I think it's maybe there's some candy there at the end or something. You go in and get the candy, come out or something. I don't know how that works. And so just different opportunities. These are just some visuals to kind of give ideas. And I'm going to have some of these. I already have a bunch of brochures up here, basically on this opportunity. And I will have these up here. I'll probably pass them out or whatever as well. But there's a bunch of those up here. And again, it just says trunk or treat, Sunday, October 26th, 5 to 8 p.m. So we can come set up before that 5 o'clock time. Be set up. People will probably undoubtedly be coming. It says join us for a free hot dog dinner, trunk or treat, and fun. Okay, so just a very simple thing here at the church, the parking lot, and the address there. And then more information, we're going to put some different things on the website as well, put a little thing on there, you know, kind of leading people to a page and be able to give more information there as well. and we can update things as needed. So just some different things there. I would take advantage of it. It's an opportunity. I realize not everybody maybe wants to be involved in that or would want to, and that's fine, but I think it's just a great opportunity. And so I just want to give that to you there. Okay, well, I think that's it for that opportunity. I challenge you to kind of take advantage of that some more, maybe talk to Katie or whatever. But at this time, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start with a word of prayer. We're going to start our business meeting portion of the night, and then we'll go from there. Dear Father, we're thankful for the opportunity to be able to, as a church congregation, as a church body, to be able to move forward as you lead us to do so. And Lord, I pray that you just give us all wisdom, give us understanding, that you help us be patient with one another and to truly understand what it is that you have for us. May you help us be able to move forward with those things that you want us to implement, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, before we officially start, though, I'm actually going to have John and Amy come up. They had requested to join, and they've gone through some different things having to do with the prospective member of the class. They weren't able to physically be here for the class, but have watched all different things online and been able to. We've gone back and forth a bunch about any questions and other things like that. And so I do want to just take an opportunity to be able to bring them into church membership, having talked to them and recommending them to the church for church membership. So do I have a motion to recommend to bring them into church membership? Okay, Charlie, I think was first. Okay, I need like one of we need those like pads where you just stand up and, okay, whatever. Charlie, I think is first. All right, do I have a second? Okay, Bill, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed, like sign. Sounds like we usually need about 20 seconds. All right. We'll have them come up at the end just to kind of keep the flow of things here. We'll have them come up back at the end, and we'll allow people to be able to come through and actually give you what's the right hand of fellowship and left or left-handed or whatever, and be able to just kind of give you a welcome to the church. So, okay. All right. Well, I have a few things here. I'm going to ask for some help passing some stuff out here. Maybe Bill and David, if you could come up here and split some of these up. You guys can fight over how many you need on each side. If you need more there. You can give one maybe to at least a couple, but every couple can get one for now. There's about 20 of them. I haven't done the count here. Typically, that's about what it takes. Something along those lines. But just in case, maybe every couple can get one. It has two sides. We're going to look at this in a second here. Before we do so, we're going to be reading the minutes. So we'll do that once these are passed out. You just flag Bill or David down if you need anything there. Does everybody have one? Does anybody need one? Or maybe a couple that needs another one? Looks like we have a few more left. Feel free to take any more there. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and, Carol, if you could read the minutes for us, that would be helpful.
Okay, July 15th, 2018. Motion to start, Charlie. Pastor Allen mentioned June also widow, and we read verse 55 through verse 16. Verse 8 is what stood out to them. What does God's word say? We realize she has her children to support her. She has to struggle with this and walk in the position where it's right. She suggests we support her until that happens. And I questioned the asked to her children to see if they were going to help her. And
as read? Okay, David, do I have a second? Okay, Charlie. All in favor, say aye. Okay, opposed, like sign. All right, you guys have it. If you want to, maybe you've already been perusing as we've been looking through this, the budget portion, we'll just kind of go through that here quickly. Go through that in particular, and then we'll move on to some other, just a few other things as well. Trying to get some of these here. There's two sides to this, so it's a two-sided page. The two sides are different, okay? The one side is last quarter. You see on the top there, it says last quarter. The dates are 7/1 through 9/30. Do you see that on the top there? So there's last quarter, and then the other side is the year to the last quarter. Okay, so last 3 quarters is on one page, and the last 1 quarter is on the other page. Does that make sense? That's something that typically try to, it doesn't always take place, but try to get that as and it will factor in some of this. But we're looking at the last quarter page. So if you can find that one, the one that says 7/1/2018 through 9/30/2018 on the top. You see that? Using the 2016 budget. So I'm just going to go down maybe category by category, see if there's any particular questions. I'll address some things as well. The first category, the first thing I want to address, but then any questions can be taken as well. There is the Love Gift Out category. It obviously exceeds the Love Gift In by almost, actually it's just slightly over $2,000. The reason for that is there was a love gift given in another quarter that went out in this quarter. I don't know if that makes sense, but just so that you're aware of what is taking place there. Okay. Any questions so far? Just kind of as we cruise down here. Okay, medical insurance, medical out. The budget previously set for, there was a few other things that came in here as well for this. Some teeth cleaning, other things like that came in that are periodic expenses. But there's those things there in medical out. So it's a little bit over what it normally would be. And then I'll go through the ministries and I'll just stop, see if you have any questions again. Camp, there is the money's in versus some money's out. And so there's a lot of money going out right in this quarter because we went to camp and we paid for camp, etc. If you flip it over, you'll see that we still are in the red in the sense of, we still have money left to spend in that. But for this particular quarter, obviously, there's money that's going out, not necessarily money coming in. So it looks well, there's just a lot of money going out. Music, nothing there. Kids Club, outreach. There is the negative number there is actually indicating money that has come back. What typically happens with the outreach category is that is used to start, for instance, the New Freedom Market, and there's a couple other things like that are used to, out of that fund, those things are started, and then they eventually pay back all of that money. And so what's actually happening in this quarter is all of that money has then been paid back, and so there's a negative. Otherwise, there wouldn't normally be a negative in an outreach category. It'd be a 0 at best. But so just note that, if you would. Rescue mission, again, nothing there. That's something that was addressed, and we will be addressing it at the beginning of next year and this year. Sunday school, and then Vacation Bible School, again, because Vacation Bible School just occurred. You have all of the expenses now coming out. And if you turn over the sheet, you'll find that over the course of the year, it will balance out. It almost balances out right now, but it will balance out over the course of the year. Just kind of keep that in mind. But again, just a cyclical pattern of some of these events leads to that. So, okay, any questions up to this point? Any questions? Yes?
What is Kids Club?
Kids Club would be it didn't have anything this quarter, but don't let that shock you. If you turn it over, you're going to find things in Kids Club. There are some expenses that kind of initially had to be sent out for Kids Club, but because of the nature of Kids Club, the expenses aren't always as, every single quarter you don't always see expenses. I don't know if that makes sense. So Kids Club would be the program that's going on right now downstairs with the Kids Club. So, sorry, maybe I was trying to answer too much there. Okay, any other questions? All right, then missions for this quarter, is there. As you noted, we're just a little bit over in the missions category there. Some of that is due to some different paying some missionary stuff and other things. Sometimes even postage, other things come out of that as well. So it'll balance out a little bit towards the end of the year. It's a little bit over only because if you flip over the page to yearly, you're gonna see it's a little bit over because of a catching up of CEF. If you remember, we had different missionaries that we had to catch up, and so CEF being one of those, and that is part of that situation there. And then personal expenses. I'm trying to look at anything there in particular that would be of interest. There was some more speaker fees as Katie and I were gone a little bit this summer. Some of that caught up to us here in this quarter as well. Any questions up to this point as we're working down through this? I won't take forever on this, but okay. And then staffing as well, or staff, that staff category. Education slightly over, but should balance out. Housing and salary are a little bit over due to some of the that which has come in because of the raise that was instituted. Some of those things we'll have to work on here at the beginning of the year. Mileage as well there. Any questions thus far? Okay. Supplies as well. Again, different supplies there. Again, some things kind of come due faster than others. In office category in particular, I'm just going to draw your attention to that one. If you flip over the page, obviously there is a lot more expense in office. There are some categories, and this is something we still have to fine tune, there are some categories that are hard to define what goes in those categories. We have done a lot, and I will say this, we have done a lot of printing of all sorts of materials and stuff. Whether that should be an outreach or an office is kind of the debate sometimes. We try to do the best that we can with that. Sometimes we split one versus the other if we're doing different things. We've done a lot of postage things as well, which kind of go through the office, both missionary cards and all sorts of other mailings that have taken place. That comes out of the office at this point because we really don't have a postage portion there. So there's a number of different things. Also this year, I believe, was the year for the update of the website. And again, we put that in office when that was a significant expense. I want to say it was like $400, and it's for like 5 years worth of web hosting. So some different things there to note. And then utilities, electric a little bit higher, but it typically is through the summer. And right after we get through the summer, and then it kind of will catch up over the year is the plan. And then gas obviously is incredibly low, but again, we haven't hit the hard months of winter. And we didn't have a whole lot of expensive heating through the summer, so thankfully that kept it away there. And again, the cyclical pattern of some of those things. Trash, water, sewer a little bit higher, something that we're gonna have to continue to watch. I did notice that it dropped when we replaced the toilet that was running. So if you ever hear a toilet that's running, please bring it to our attention, because it will leak all the time. And we actually found that there was one toilet that was leaking, and our water bill was incredibly high, and we dealt with it, and it almost cut it in half. I mean, it was like $200-some, and then like $112. So, I mean, it was worth the investment of a new toilet, just because like you'll make that up over a couple quarters. So anyways, so we're looking at those things, and we're trying to replace those on a periodic basis, because there are some that are needing to be replaced. So, but you can help us with that. If you see or hear of some problem or issue, maybe you flush a toilet and you don't hear it fill up and it's done, it continues to run, and that's a problem that we need to deal with. Please bring it to our attention. Naturally, I do not spend a whole lot of time in the women's restrooms, so those are the ones that I really need help on, but, all right, so that's that. All right, any questions about that? I would refer you as well to the other side of the page. You can take a look at that some more. That's really more for your information as we go through the year and as you just see kind of where we are, etc. This is one thing I have thought of maybe for next year is kind of keeping a weekly in the bulletin. This might mean a little bit more work, and the work would really be on our end, not necessarily Beth, who tries to do that, or Rick, or whatever, who tries to keep some numbers in there as well, but trying to keep us on track as far as like where we are for the year. I've seen this before where basically it's like, okay, here's the budget for the year, where are we for the year, just kind of weekly keeping us on track to see like, okay, where are we? rather than just every quarter dealing with that. It usually seems to stay pretty much on track, but obviously there's cyclical patterns to everything. So that's something that we might think about too. If you have any thoughts about that, feel free to let me know. Okay, do we have any more questions? Start there. Okay, and if there's any other questions too, maybe you're not comfortable asking it in public or whatever, still come to us and ask. We can pull up information, we can do different things to be able to get you the answers that you need. And so it's really not a complicated program. We use Quicken for this, so okay. Do I have a motion for accepting the financial statement as read? Okay, Rick, do I have a second? Kitty? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed, like sign. All right, the ayes have it. Just so you know as well, the balance, sometimes people ask this, and so I purposely looked it up. The balance of the checking account as of October 1st is $49,307 and then 45 cents. So I don't know if that's helped there. I can give that to you, Carol, afterward too if you didn't get it, but there's that there. Okay, well I'm going to move to another section here. Before we get to this proposed amendment that we sent out, and I'm going to try to explain it just briefly for us. But before I get to that, I want to address just a few things that have come up and make sure that we're all on the same page, or at least try to do our part to be on the same page. As Scripture reminds us to live peaceably with all men, try to do that on our side as much as lieth in you, as Romans 12 reminds us. A couple things I want to mention. I'm up here tonight because Rodney resigned as treasurer. He just felt like it was just too much for him, and there's a lot. I will tell you, I know what he's going through because the treasurer role, there's just so many things that are involved in that role. I've said it time and time again. I know I've said different things about having somebody to do different things like this, and he understands, I think, the just everything that's involved, just the nitty-gritty of all the details of keeping that role afloat. I mean, so anyway, I'm not going to go into all the details of that. If you want to come talk to me about it later, there are plenty of things that take place behind the scenes to keep things moving, and I think people don't fully realize that, but that's fine. That's a part of that. But he just felt like it was too much for him at this time. That was my understanding, and so if you want to talk to him more about that, that's fine as well. So we will be, between now and probably next business meeting, putting some things out about both deacons and treasurer, and so we'll be talking about that. And then the other, Kyle also just decided to resign as deacon. He's got numerous reasons for that, and so he decided to resign. And so in some respects, it makes the job a little bit easier to pick which deacons stay versus which deacons we replace, if there were to be any replaced. And so, if you have any questions about why he resigned or anything, feel free to talk to him directly. That's the best course of action, I think. But him and I had a good conversation and stuff, and I agree with some of the assessments and different things that he has talked about, and he's just feels like the Lord is moving him on in that sense, and so, but he's really been a help, and so has Rodney. They both have done a wonderful job. I've seen a lot of growth in both of them, and it's been exciting to work with them. But just talk to him if you have any more questions about that in particular. So he resigned as deacon. So it basically leaves Patrick and Eric, both of which have sick families right now. So neither one of them are here. But moving forward, as we'll get to a point where, where we put something out as far as deacons, because at the end of the year we're going to be voting on deacons and moving forward with some other things as well. And so we'll, according to the Constitution, the elders are supposed to recommend to the church some deacons. And so we will go through that process and try to bring those individuals to you to be able to vote as a congregation. But having said all that, that will be taking place. It's not going to take place here tonight. So that was a few things there. I'm just looking for my notes, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. The other one was not in our business meeting last time, but if you remember on Sunday night, I think it was the July 29th, if I remember correctly, that Sunday. In the Sunday evening service, in the Sunday morning service, I went through kind of our own situation, just financially where we stand, just kind of trying to make things plain. In the Sunday evening service, there was a lot of different things that we were working through, and a lot of things that obviously clearly we needed to work through. But one in particular that was brought up, and I don't take this lightly, is an accusation that was brought up against one of the elders. And so, according to 1 Timothy 5, obviously it talks about if an accusation is brought up against an elder by 2 or 3 witnesses, etc., in that passage. And so I don't take that lightly. And the accusation very simply was this, and it's against Bill Fisher. Okay, it was Becky that made the accusation against Bill Fisher, and basically stating to the effect of, and I may not get it word for word, but basically when the raise was talked about, I think Bill Fisher said something to the effect of that I didn't know anything about the raise, okay? And so, obviously, being confronted with that, then we need to work through the details of what exactly that entails and everything. And I remember that night, obviously Bill Fisher said, if I said that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mislead somebody. And so it took me a while to actually piece together what had taken place, and I'm just going to give you the details of what I believe took place. Bill Fisher and I have talked about this as well, and he said, I forgot. That's my fault. I forgot. He has since then said, if that's a problem, if this is something that would disqualify me, I'd be willing to step down as an elder, whatever. So he's been very forthright about that, and I appreciate that. I think it speaks to his heart and his character. I think it speaks to his desire to be a blessing to the church, however that would be, and that really is a wonderful thing. But basically what took place on that day was when we had a meeting, the deacons came, the elders were set to have a meeting. The deacons came as well into that to be able to have a meeting with us. We had a meeting for about an hour and a half with the deacons. We just worked through all sorts of different things. The deacons ended up leaving, and we still needed to have our elder meeting. And so we only had about 15 minutes left for our elder meeting at that point, just because it had gone so long. And so we kind of discussed some different things quickly. It did come up in that meeting, basically, that Katie and I's situation was, and I hated to put it this bluntly, but I said our situation is so dire we're not going to make it to the end of the year. And I proposed in that, I said, we're willing to work, I'm willing to work, but I know that previously there was a previous pastor that worked, and people didn't really like that, and it was a very, very big rub for the church. And so that's always been a big thing in my mind, where it's kind of like this, okay, I can't work outside as a pastor because I need to be dedicated full-time to ministry. But obviously understanding the ebb and flow of everything, that I really wasn't, we were trying very hard to make it on what was given to us, and even Katie teaching piano and other things like that. Anyway, so I kind of explained that to them. It didn't take much explanation. Obviously they understood the situation, and they really felt like something needed to move forward, that clearly we were in dire straits. And so with that, we in the elders in that meeting basically had decided, okay, something's going to come up this next meeting having to do with this, okay? So we just kind of talked. It wasn't a very long meeting. The whole meeting was probably 15 minutes. That whole portion was probably like 2 or 3 minutes where we discussed it. It was stated, okay, this has to come up in the next business meeting. It's not something we can push off. The idea was they wanted to push it off to the end of the year. And I just stated, we can't continue like it is. I mean, we're gonna have to start doing something. And I was totally willing to do whatever. If that meant working outside, if that meant whatever, I was willing to do whatever needed to be done. But they clearly saw that there was a need there. And so, because of that, they wanted to bring the deacons back in because of what we just talked about with the deacons and just being on the same page. And so we brought all the deacons back into that meeting. I left that meeting so that they could discuss, and whenever they discuss things about our financial situation, I always leave those meetings. I'm never a part of those meetings, other than just to let them know what the details are and to leave. But all that to say, the deacons came back in, and they had basically what amounted to about a 2.5-hour meeting where they're going back and forth on everything, and long story short, it was kind of a gridlock. And the gridlock basically was decided by a vote, and the vote was carried by a 1-vote margin. Okay, so basically it was, if the votes were to carry, then this would be discussed in the meeting, if not, whatever. And so Bill Fisher, obviously, walking out of that meeting, in the 2.5-hour meeting that it was, and all the details, and all the discussion, whatever, all those kind of things, then had to, and let me just say this, the deacons did not fully understand or grasp yet the situation. I've said that before, and I want to make that very clear. They didn't fully grasp the situation. I tried to give them all the details. There was a miscommunication clearly on the details. We've sorted that out since, but I just want to let you know where that is. And so, because of that, very simply then, Bill Fisher wasn't thinking that I knew of anything. I didn't know, I didn't even know when I addressed the church that meeting had taken place. So I still, I mean, I knew there was a meeting that took place, but that the meeting led to a vote of that nature. Okay? I had no idea, I really didn't understand all that. I was finally gathering that really, even weeks later, really understanding that and figuring that out. It took a while to kind of understand all the details of that. And so when the accusation came, I didn't understand, but Bill Fisher had been through a long meeting where it was not really, it was up in the air the whole meeting what would take place. And finally a vote was taking place, and I had no knowledge of that vote. I had no knowledge of anything that had taken place along the lines of the fact that it had been like that. And so because of that, I understand, and that's what I'm bringing the point to, is I understand why there was an understanding that I didn't know, because I did not know some of those things that they had just gone through. And so I look at the whole situation, I back up from it, and basically I'm going to say this: I think it was a misunderstanding. It was just a misunderstanding. It was a miscommunication. Bill says, I just plain forgot, which, if you've ever been in a 2.5-hour meeting with all sorts of details, if you forget a detail, if you can remember all the details, like, that's awesome, but if you forget details, well, join the club, because I've forgotten more than I can remember. So, and that's why we try to take detailed notes, but oftentimes things do get lost, and we're trying to do our best on that. Something you can pray for us on, because communication needs to continue to improve. But long story short, it does boil down to, in my mind, it boils down to just simply a miscommunication. Not an intentional trying to lie, but just a miscommunication. And that miscommunication obviously was even dealt with that night. As Bill said, I'm sorry, about that. I remember apologizing that night for that. And so, so I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. It's a serious thing whenever there's an accusation brought. It's always important to make sure we all have all the facts and details. I didn't know how to respond to it because I did not have the facts and details, and I was trying to figure that out. And so obviously then having those, that's the conclusion that I've come to in doing the due diligence that I've done. So, does anybody have any questions or thoughts about that, other than the fact that miscommunication occurs?
Just as a thought, I think it's appropriate for elders to be supreme capacity in on a situation where there may be some conflict, that you would have input and understanding of that as well.
Yeah, I have thought about that as well, and that's something that we've talked over. Katie said this. She said, we're never going to go out of a church business meeting again. So, but in any case, I'm not saying that's what we're going to do or not do. I'm just saying that's her stance on it. All that to say, and obviously the whole purpose for that is to allow people to freely discuss something. But to me, I'm like, if you want to freely discuss something, freely discuss something. Like, anyway, but I understand that it can make people uncomfortable if I was there to be able to talk about some of the things you guys talk about. So, anyway, okay. Any other thoughts, questions, or concerns? It's a fun thing to deal with, but it's an important one. Okay. All right, well, we're going to get to then the proposed amendment. I went through this in Sunday school hour. I do have some different things that I want to say just briefly. How many of you got this proposed amendment and were able to read it? Just so we're on the same page here. Who got it and read it? Okay, that was okay, you guys got it as well. Basically, the amendment here deals with inactive membership. I'm going to try to do my best to just kind of read through this a little bit here. In fact, if you turn with me to Luke 4:16, we're going to turn there first, and I'm going to look at some things. Just briefly here about this amendment, because I think there was some lack of clarity, and I want to be clear as we go through this. Luke 4:16 says this. It says, and he came to Nazareth, so let's talk about Jesus. It says, and he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. Now, the phrase that I kind of honed in on a little bit in Sunday school, and will do so again here tonight, is, and as his custom was. Can I ask this question? What was Christ's custom on the Sabbath day? Okay. can we put it in historical context? Were there any hypocrites in the synagogue? Right? Isn't that the most prominent excuse for not going to church is there's hypocrites at church? I'm just telling you, from Christ's own life, what did he do? Didn't stop him from doing what was his normal custom. You know, I think we actually miss out on a blessing when we, instead of working through the hypocrisy we actually leave, we miss out on a blessing. Because oftentimes it's through the hardest portions of life that we learn the biggest lessons. I was, just this last week, as I kind of talked about a little bit this morning in the message, I know Katie and I still love her, et cetera, all these kind of things. But as we've worked through different things, the things that have built our relationship the most, and I look over the past 8 years, 104 days, and now it's been 25 hours, okay, 24 and a half, okay, anyway. But as I look back over that time, the things that have built our relationship the most have actually been the disagreements we've had. Things that have built our relationship the most have been the disagreements we've had. Why? Because they hone both our communication skills, but also our response to one another. And oftentimes they challenge us where we just plain need to be challenged. And really, it's no different as a church, as oftentimes you have to work through things. And this is one of those things that we're trying to work through as a church and be able to move forward. Here, Christ's custom was to go into the Sabbath. He didn't avoid, on the Sabbath, he didn't avoid the synagogue. He actually went to the synagogue, even though they were clearly hypocrites, and he talked throughout his earthly ministry about the hypocrisies that were there, but didn't stop him from going, right? So anyway, I just want to bring that to your attention. I challenge you to study it some more and really think about it some more, because I think it attacks one of the lies that the devil gives is don't go to church because it's full of hypocrites. And it is, it's a lie. Because it's actually the devil trying to separate you from the accountability and from the opportunity to work through those things that you actually need to work through. So all that to say, that's kind of summarizing a little bit of this. One issue that we see as elders, I'm starting on the second paragraph, or second sentence there. One issue we see as elders is we believe needs to be addressed is the issues of members who are no longer coming or are not an active part of Grace Bible Church in any meaningful way, but haven't been removed from membership. While on occasion some clearly communicate, most never give us any firm indication. It's our desire to set up clear communication for one to form, see the sample letter that's at the end, that was also sent with this, in a process to deal with just such an occasion. In our minds, the goal is to accomplish a few things. Number one, to set up clear communication as well as expectations. Number two, to set up clear process, including a timetable. And number three, to maintain an active, participating church membership, to be sure to stay in the confines of quorum and voting restrictions as set forth in the church constitution. So we have three purposes, at least. There may be others, but those are the specific ones stated there. Furthermore, while the Constitution is clear for the process of moving to another church, we find increasingly that people who leave the membership of the church don't go anywhere. While that hurts our hearts as shepherds of people because we truly want what's best for them, we need an amendment to deal with the situation as a church and as a church body. How does that look? How do we respond to that? Not being an active part of a local assembly for the purpose of edification, fellowship, and accountability carries with it some dire consequences. I would love to look up the verses after that, but some different ones that basically talk about not forsaking assembling yourselves together, which is one that's often used for this. But also 1 Corinthians 5, where it actually says to put the person out from among you so that there can be a destruction of the flesh, so that the spirit is saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. Okay, 1 Peter 5:8 says that the devil is a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. I believe that's those two passages combined, I think, is a very powerful truth and a powerful lesson. I'm not going to get into that, and very simply this is there are consequences for disobeying God, and this is one way that we can disobey Him. While those consequences may not be seen for a long period of time, God is clear that we ought not be deceived in sowing and reaping. Our proposal is an amendment to amend the Constitution to include a section under Article 6, Membership, Section 2, Dismissal, about dismissal, quote, by inactivity, See the proposed amendment below for more. It's not our desire to place a heavy burden, but rather practical parameters. The church constitution states the following about the process of an amendment. I'm going to get to that in a second. I thought this was really interesting, this little clip here. I'm going to play the clip. It's from some different things this last week, and this one particular portion I thought was very interesting.
Some have noticed that I didn't have church on Sundays on my calendars. I also didn't list brushing my teeth. And for me, going to church on Sundays was like brushing my teeth. Automatic. Still is.
Okay, now the thing I want to hone in on there, whether you are, whatever the case is with whatever, however you perceive things, the thing that I think is very interesting is he said something that I think all of us can take note at. And that is very simply this. He said, going to church is automatic for me. Now, I'm not saying that you should make it automatic so that it's rote, but I think that I'm not trying to assess his religious, I'm not trying to assess anything along those lines. All I'm trying to do is I say, very simply this, I think it follows what Scripture here teaches that Jesus himself did, was his custom was to be in the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Okay, it's just a continual pattern. I love this. Somebody tweeted this. It's the wrestling pastor says, "Hey, pastor, sorry we didn't have time to make it to church today. Between camping, birthday parties, and travel ball, there aren't enough hours in the weekend." Okay, so obviously the point being is it's more of a priorities than the time. All of us have the same 24 hours and whatever it is, right? It's 24 hours and like 48 seconds. I don't know, there's some, anyway, whatever. We all have the same 24 hours a day, okay? But some of us choose to use those 24 hours differently, right? So this is really coming down to priorities, and it's just important for us to consider that as we consider this topic. Now, amendment to the Constitution has to do with basic recommendation of the elders and by approval of 75% of those active church members who are present to vote. Let me just state this. This is actually directly from the Constitution. It already says active church members. So there's in the Constitution itself, if you look, there are multiple times where it refers to active church members, but there's never anything about inactive, so we're trying to clarify that. All that to say, who are present to vote, proposed changes must be submitted to church members and in writing 1 week prior to the vote. Current copies of the Constitution shall be made available to the members. If you'd like a copy, we do have that here. Basically the following amendment is what is proposed for tonight and that we're discussing. Article 4, membership, Section 2, Article 6, membership, Section 2, dismissal by inactivity, excuse me. So basically we'd be adding a letter underneath that portion, and the letter would be E, and it's by inactivity. And this would be the rendering of it. All members are expected to faithfully attend the regular services of the church unless providentially hindered. And some passages there talking about, obviously, again, coming back together, not forsaking the assembling. The 1 Timothy 4 passage is important to look up, and that would be a good one to be able to follow up as well. But any member who has not attended at least a few regular services between quarterly business meetings, so let me delineate this. A quarterly business meeting is every 3 months. So there's 12 months in a year. Quarterly is a quarter of that, and it's 3 months. So every 3 months we have a quarterly business meeting. We're having one now. And if an individual has not, between the last quarterly business meeting and the present one, attended regular services, at least a few regular services. Now, what does a few regular services mean? Okay, a few. What is a few? 2, 3. Okay, you can look it up. The 2, 3. We're not trying to be. This is why we're putting here a few. Okay, we're just. It's a very small amount. We did the math. Did you know there's actually 48 services between each quarterly business meeting. There's 48 services that we have as a church. We're asking for a few, which is less than 8%. We're not shooting for the moon here. We're just asking for like simple participation. That's it. We're not. So just so that we're on the same page with this, we're not. We understand that some people have different situations than others. Some people have to work on a Sunday every now and then, or repeatedly. I mean, there's a lot of situations that we're dealing with, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible, but at the same time establish some boundaries. So going on further, it says a few services between quarterly business meetings. This individual who doesn't do this will automatically be moved to an inactive membership list prior to that business meeting, except those experiencing, so there are exceptions, extenuating situations such as illness, shut-in, away at college, in the military, or full-time Christian service. Okay? So So we understand there are reasons why this may occur on a longer basis. Okay, and we want to create opportunities to be able to work through those. It says there, those in full-time Christian service will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. We're going to be talking to them. We'll be discussing these things about this as well. And recommendation made to the congregation by the elders. And that recommendation then is made, as it says there, to the congregation, and that would be at that business meeting. This movement will not allow them, these individuals who are then inactive, to vote in quarterly business meetings or be counted against the necessary quarter restrictions. Again, this is somebody who doesn't come 2 times in a period of 3 months. They don't come at least 2 times in a period of 3 months. That could be, I'll put this out there, and I didn't delineate this, that could be one Sunday. That could be a Sunday school and a Sunday morning, and that's it. Now, I'm not saying I encourage that, and I think maybe that's the letter of the law, not the spirit, but the whole point being is this, is it's not a very hard thing, okay? This is not, some people are really concerned, maybe it's a really hard thing or something. It's just, I mean, there's 2 times in a period of 3 months. It's not even once a month. So, again, this is just the bare minimum. This is literally as minimum as you can get. Furthermore, as it says there, for inactive members, their reinstatement to full membership, voting, and quorum status occurs as they attend a minimum of 6 services between 2 consecutive business meetings, 2 consecutive quarterly business meetings. So a few is 2. 6 services out of 48, I did the math, it's like 12 point something%. Again, we're not shooting for the moon here. That could be 2 Sundays, Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, out of 3 months. If for some reason you're working a whole 3 months worth of Sundays, you could come on a Wednesday twice. And it's not, we're trying to make it, we understand that we need to have some boundaries, but also to work with those as well. Furthermore, an inactive member with a continual pattern of not attending regular services will be removed from being a member of Grace Bible Church after the period of 1 year. So again, the time delineation of this takes 3 months to become an inactive member. So between we now have our quarterly business meeting, so by basically by the end of the year when we have our next quarterly business meeting, if somebody doesn't attend church at least twice in between now and then, and they are a member, they will then be placed on an inactive membership list. I can already tell you, I have personally, and tried to do this weekly, reach out to anybody who does not attend, who normally attends, period, whether it's a member or not. So this is already taking place weekly, but beyond that point, communication will be taking place, and communication will take place to this effect as well. But at that 3-month period, basically they become inactive, and if they stay inactive for 1 year, so they have 4 segments of 3 months where they can attend any 6 services and be reinstated as a member, with voting privileges and quorum being counted as quorum. Okay, so does this make sense for everybody yet? I'm just trying to put out some details. I want to make sure that it makes sense. Basically, it would be 1 year and 3 months of being inactive before this would occur, which is the end of this. Basically, an individual being removed as a member. And does that mean they can't attend Grace Bible Church? No. You can attend as a non-member as long as you want to attend. So, okay, now, I mean, if there's some sort of church discipline situation, we might have to say, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't attend. I mean, I hope we never have to work through that, but that may happen too. But all that to say is clearly we're trying to give time but yet set parameters. Does that make sense? Communication, again, will take place when somebody goes inactive or when they're about to, and then subsequently for dismissal if no correction is made according to the timetable above. Can I say it this way? You almost have to work at making this, you literally would have to work at making this you. This is not like an accidental, like, oh my goodness, I forgot to attend the Sunday night service and I typically don't. This is like bare minimum. And as I stated in Sunday school, I think all of this can be wrapped up with 3 words. Go to church. I could take this whole amendment and just wrap it up with 3 simple words. Go to church. And I hate to have to make it this detailed, but I think as a church we have to have some guidelines and understand why the guidelines are there. Okay? Is there any questions? Anything that's unclear? Please, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I've asked other people to read through these things. I realize that sometimes as I write particularly, I can write in very long sentences where I have a lot of things there. Some people write like the dog ate the bowl, or, you know, and I just I have really long sentences. All right, so understand that sometimes it can be hard. I'm not trying to make it hard. But seriously though, does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Is anything unclear about this amendment? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Something.
Absolutely.
Because I go like this, but,
Sure.
why does someone have to be, why can't they be an indefinite inactive? Why do you have to dismiss them? Because, I don't know, if someone knows they're being dismissed and they want to come back, they're not going to come back because they've just been dismissed. So why
Yeah.
discourage them from coming back? So why not have an indefinite inactive?
I guess what I'd say is this: for a year and a half, we're trying to actively reach out to them. Well, a year and 3 months, okay, to be technical, but we're trying to actively reach out to them. I guess at the end of that, it kind of becomes clear to me that maybe they're not interested. I mean, I'm not saying that at a future point they wouldn't be, and not that they're welcome to attend as a non-member or welcome to attend as, you know, but what happens is this, and this is what we're trying to work with, is the understanding that if we have a lot of people that are members but never show up, what happens? Well, at some point, we actually can never have a business meeting, because we never actually will make a quorum, which is 25% of the active church membership, those that are members. So, and we've done the math, and we've looked ahead in some of that stuff, and we're kind of like, you know, there are situations in which we almost get to the point where it's like we can't have a church business meeting. This evening, as I was looking through, I was like, okay, we need a few more people to show up, you know, to have. I'm just telling you what's on our side of things, and to me, can I just say that to me, it's just absolutely sad. I think that's, I don't know how else to say it. That's just absolutely sad. I think it's, I'd love to say it's just a sign of the times. I mean, all of our hearts, we all have to make choices, okay? We all have priorities. But, yeah, anyway. So, does that make sense? I don't know. Maybe that doesn't answer your question, though, exactly.
Well, no.
Why don't you just allow them to be indefinitely if they wanted to be indefinite, I could play the system for them. They could just come twice and stay an active member. They could, at the end, you know, before that period of 1 year is up after the 3 months, they could come 6 times and be reinstated and kick the can down the road for another year and 3 months if they really want. Like, to me, it's like we're bending over backwards to try and allow that. And this does not mean, and I want people to understand this does not mean you're no longer welcome here at Grace Bible Church. This is just very simply for us, the quorum and voting, we have to be very careful to make sure it's an active church membership that's participating in business meetings. Again, this is not to say you are a bad person necessarily. I would say that you're not following what God says, so I don't know how it's, anyway, that's, yeah. Okay. Does that kind of answer your question? Not really? I'm trying to, maybe we're approaching different venues. To remain inactive forever. I guess the problem with that then is we have to then keep track of every single inactive. So we're going to have an active membership that's just like our active membership. And that puts a lot of strain and pressure on like trying to communicate and who do you communicate to and not to. I'm trying to make it a little bit clearer who you communicate to and not. Like when we sent out the letter to proposed amendment, we knew who to send it out to and who not to. But then you get into, okay, they're an active church member, but they're a member, so should we send that to them or not? And then what ends up happening is kind of we get back to the beginning. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's not, I don't want to do that. But I think it is necessary only for the sake of the quorum and for the voting. That really is the necessary part. Again, it's what makes an individual a member of God's church is that they've trusted Christ alone for salvation. So, I mean, that's not something I can revoke from them, and I won't. But what makes them a member of our church and a voting member of our church would be somebody who is that active or participating person. You know, does that make sense? That doesn't mean somebody can't show up because they're inactive or that they're no longer a member and were once. Yeah, I don't know. I want to avoid any sort of a discipline, if I can say it that way, if you see it as a discipline. But I think that it's important to, even for that person, it's important for them to understand what they're doing. And I think that's why some of this is also there, is just for it's another thing for that person to understand this is an important thing. Or as a church saying, this is an important thing to come to church regularly. This is an important thing for you. And if we're negligent on backing up what God's word says, then I don't think we're going to get to a good place as a church. Does that make sense? Maybe I made it. Yeah. It's not an easy thing, and it's not something I want to work through, for sure. I mean, to me, I said, it's already solved by 3 words, go to church. I mean, let's just make this really simple, but, yeah. Okay, any other thoughts, questions? Yes, David?
Are you keeping track of who has attended and when?
We actually have, not to be spooky or weird, but we have every single service, I keep track of who's here and who's not. Every single service, I fill out an Excel spreadsheet that says who's here and not. And it's just a helpful tool for me because then I know who to reach out to because they weren't there. I don't not reach out to you maybe because you're here. I mean, that's fine too. But this is just a helpful tool. We can talk about this more afterwards if you want. And so basically, I am keeping track, and I could go back. If you asked me any service within the last whatever, I could go back and actually pull up the exact. And I can say, well, these people weren't, these people were. I tried to contact them, I texted them, I called them, I went to visit them, I did. So I could actually pull that all up. And for me, that's more. I'm totally not I say this. Sometimes I can be a more scatterbrained type person, so I really actually need that for myself personally. It's a helpful tool that I use. So that kind of comes back to that question is, I could actually say, well, no, because I have recorded here. And the elders are actually helping me with that as well, because if you want to go further, we actually have a quadrant for each one of the elders, if you remember. And so that quadrant, they're helping keep track of those specific individuals and those specific people. So does it make sense? And then a deacon, each one of those to kind of help with the needs too. It's just an organizational thing. That's what this is. Yeah. Okay. It's a good question because otherwise, I will tell you, without this kind of a thing, services do kind of, Sundays and services just kind of blend together. It's just kind of you get an overall sense of who's here and who's not, but it's hard to keep track of it without a specific thing like that. So, does that make sense? It's a good question. It's been a helpful tool for me. I've only implemented that portion of it, about a couple months ago. So, yeah.
They've been dismissed from church, and
As far as being a member.
as far as
Yep.
I remember, and 6 months down the line, will they then have to go, how will they, it doesn't say what.
How to be reinstated if they are. This is what I actually left that out, and the reason why I left it out, I don't have the Constitution up here, it's up here, it's down here. The reason I have it is because there is a restoration clause already in the Constitution. And so what I looked at is we can actually leave that there rather than making this more lengthy and just use that restoration clause. It says here, any person, so there's a restoration clause that's underneath this. Any person having repented who requests restoration as a member shall be considered by the pastor and elders. Upon their recommendation and majority vote of the church, the repentant person shall be restored. So there's already a restoration clause, and, so that's a very good question, yeah. And I tried not to make it super long because we already have that in there, so. And that's always the goal of anything like this, or above and beyond that, church discipline. The goal is always, biblically, restoration. You're doing what's best for that person, not just what's most convenient for you. So we're trying to implement some of those things, and maybe we're not doing it perfectly, but that's the point. Yes?
Hopefully, we'll never have to implement.
I hope so. I hope so.
That's the plan, that hopefully it'll never be needed.
Sure.
But the person is made really abundantly clear that it is for voting purposes and quorum.
Voting in quorum.
Yeah,
And not just coming to church.
yeah.
Yeah, anybody can come to church, and I would encourage that. Either member or not, I want you to come. I want you to be a part of everything. It's just that form and the voting. I think I tried to put that in there, and I understand it's not this movement. Will not allow them to vote according to this meeting consistent with necessary quorum restrictions. I tried to state that a couple times throughout there, I think it's stated, anyway, but I did try to, but I'm sure I could have worded it better, I just tried to word it that way, so, okay, good question. All right, yes, Pat?
For instance, like Tom and Jess are not coming back.
Yes.
So they would just be automatically renewed.
They actually have communicated, so they wouldn't even fall under this. They've communicated, and so, and whenever you, as a member, you say, well, I plan to move on or whatever else, I mean, it's always just helpful to just communicate. I mean, on both sides, obviously, we try to reach out to anybody who's no longer coming and say, okay, what's the situation? Are you sick? Do you need help? Or whatever. We try to work through that, but then on the other side, then, being able to, obviously, if there's communication the other way. So, it's a good question. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Justin.
This is the first time you're gonna call the list like 50 months from now.
I'm sorry.
This is the first time you're gonna like tear down the list like 50 months from now, like a year and 2 months, or is it? Do you go like is this not happening?
This would, in my view, if we vote on it tonight and accept it tonight as a proposed amendment, then it would go into effect. So now it's January. We're now. Let me tell you, I've already, again, coming back to this. We already had, and you can come look at this if you want afterward. You don't read my notes, but you can come. I'll get you a blank one. But you can come look at this. We have everybody on here, even visitors a lot of times, or we'll add, just so that we're keeping track of. And to me, this is I call this a shepherding page. Okay, this is a tool to kind of track the sheep. I don't know how to. I'm not trying to make it sound derogatory. I'm just trying to be able to work through that aspect. So already going on is the opportunity of reaching out, and I don't wait for 3 months. If I don't see somebody for a week, I'm going to check in on them and say, and I may miss. I'm human. I also miss. I get busy. But I'm trying to be consistent with that, and implementing specifically some of those things even in the last couple months here. So more so. Does that make sense? Does that answer that question?
I guess what's the anticipated number of?
I don't know that their anticipated number of. You're looking at people or whatever you're saying on the list, and we have a number. We don't actually have an anticipated number of who would be eliminated. I don't have an anticipated number.
I only meant, has there ever been a case before where you have had trouble getting 25% to that number?
To the board, yes.
So would this not have that? This wouldn't help that for at least 15 months from now.
This would help it actually 3 months from now. So our next business meeting, it would go into effect because anybody who hasn't come would be inactive. So even next business meeting, we'd see the effect already. I want people to be participating. I don't want to discourage participation at any level, but it's just I'll bring this up. This is one in particular that, and I talked about in there, the full-time Christian service, etc. Candy Swift, who is a member of Grace Bible Church, but she's overseas and will be through a period of time. So how do we respond to that? What do we do? I understand that's one person, and we say, well, that's no big deal. It's one person. Well, the problem is one person, and then 2 people, and then 2 people, and then 2. And when you're starting out with a small church anyway, that number, you very quickly get to 10%, 20%. You very quickly get to some of these numbers that then almost makes it impossible unless everybody shows up. So I can run the math with you later, but if you want, you can run that too. But so we've looked at this on all sorts of different angles, and that's kind of some of the best solutions. But it's a good question. It's a very good question. So good. Any other questions?
Is there something in here about reinstatement?
No, nothing.
Government restoration. My point is, could this just refer to the restoration?
To the restoration clause. According to timetable clause. I guess.
I think there was something before.
Yeah, and maybe this is through the church constitution. There are dismissal. Underneath dismissal, there's actually A, B, C, D, and then this would be E. Underneath that aspect, it's by death, dismissal by death, or by request, by exclusion, by erasure. And none of them actually talk about the restoration part of it, as far as referencing that. I was just trying to go off of that, I guess. But it's a good question. I guess it's kind of almost assumed in the Constitution because that's the next section of the
I was
list.
thinking there was a sentence in there that said something.
Said something about that.
If they want to come back.
Yeah, was the sentence in here was in the middle of this, for inactive members, so that's somebody that's then inactive, reinstatement to the full membership, voting and quorum status occurs, and it delineates that portion. Yeah, that's a good question. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, do I have any, can I say it this way, do I have any objections to the proposed amendment? Is there any objections to the proposed amendment as stated?
I'm gonna abstain from voting simply because when you wanna join this church, as far as I'm concerned, you join it with the intention of being faithful. Now, can you be here every service? No.
Yeah.
It's humanly impossible. But to state a minimum of 6 services, or so I'm just gonna abstain.
Sure, sure. I understand where you're coming from. Some of this is also just to put on the books and in writing to, can I say this to even previous church members? There's a lot of previous church members that we've never really, they are no longer members for any reason, but it's to make sure that we understand they're no longer members. So that we're all on the same page with that? Does that make sense? It's not just for existing, and everybody that's joined Grace Bible Church in the recent past has talked about different things like that, and obviously those individuals are individuals who are coming on a regular basis, etc. So, I mean, I guess in anything, while we don't necessarily have that number as Justin talked about, it would kind of just put on the books there that we're saying, okay, so we're moving, it's almost like moving forward as a church. We're moving forward as a church. Anybody who does not qualify for this, we're letting them know. Okay, this is the case, and we're moving forward. Inactive, because they're not coming, and then you have them a year to be a part of everything, and after that, they're no longer a member. So it's to deal with any previous ties of whoever might have thought, well, I have stake in Grace Bible Church because I am a member, I was a member 14, 18 years ago, 16. We just have no way of knowing all of that stuff. And so some of this is that moving forward too. Does that make sense? It's not always just, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but yeah, that's fine. You could abstain from it. That's not. According to the church constitution, we would need 75% of those who are active, who are members, to be able to say yes to it. So, okay. All right. Any other questions, concerns, or anything else? Okay. Well, if I don't have any objections, I think that it would be important to be able to vote on the amendment, to be able to move forward the proposed amendment here. And we didn't necessarily send out like ballots or anything along those lines. We'll probably just do here a raise of hands, a show of hands, as it were. And again, I mean, just to work through that, I understand that sometimes those kind of things make people uncomfortable, but there really was not too many other ways that we thought about doing that. So, for those in favor of the proposed amendment, could you raise your hand? So those in favor say, you know what, up, yes, okay. All right. Okay, all right. So I'm not doing the math, but that is over 75% of the active church membership that's here to vote. Doing the math in my head, but it's clearly way over 75%, close to 90. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I guess with that, then the proposed amendment would go into effect. As stated, I'm not saying that if people feel like we have to amend something or do something with the amendment, if you really felt like that, you can definitely talk to us. Okay. All right, do we have any other new business or anything else? We have a motion to adjourn the business meeting. Okay, Bernie, and a second, David. All right, all in favor, say aye. Okay, opposed, like sign. Usually have a pretty good aye at the end of the business meeting, so that's good. All right, we gotta start with that next time. All right, let's go ahead and close the word prayer.